are you doing out there?
Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to another one of my Friday uploads. My last few videos have been part of a two-part series, and I posted the first part on Friday and the second part on Tuesday. That hasn't given me a lot of time to work on my next video, which is the one you're watching right now. And I'm starting recording this on Thursday, which means that editing is gonna have to happen really quickly. So my other video ideas are gonna take way longer to work on, so instead, how about I show everybody how I make my thumbnails using Garry's mod. I feel like that would be a much easier video to make within this short amount of time I have, and it would still be interesting for the majority of my audience. So here we are in Garry's mod. I'm going to be creating the thumbnail for this particular video, which means that it's going to have something to do with the actual process of creating YouTube thumbnails. In this case, I figure that just having the YouTube logo and my character in the thumbnail would be good enough. But first of all, I need to decide on a backdrop. Luckily, I've got tons of TF2 maps all loaded up here for me to use at any point, and obviously I'm going to want something that has some kind of high-tech backdrop. I think I know the perfect map for that. It is a man versus machine map called Doppler. Doppler has some really high-tech backgrounds, and I feel like I could make most use of them for this particular thumbnail, so let's go into that map. So I had to fly into this area using NoClip because there's no such thing as teams in Garry's mod, and you spawn in any spawn point, which includes the robot spawn points. I did find a good backdrop right here in the spawn room, which I think I'm going to take use of. It's very loud in there though. That's the one problem I have. Okay, so it kind of gets softer right about here, which is a pretty good location, I feel like. It's got a nice backdrop right there. It's also got some props to the side. This could be really good. So what I'm going to need to do is spawn in the character that I'm going to use. In this case, I'm spawning in an engineer. And using the stand pose tool, I'm gonna get it on its feet. Obviously, I don't want just a stock engineer. I want it to be my engineer. And luckily, I remember all of the names of the models of the cosmetics I want my character to wear. In the case that you don't know what these cosmetics are, it's really easy to look online for TF2 model file names and find them really quickly. I'm just gonna finish off with the zombie skin, which is right here. Okay, done. Now I'm gonna use the easy bone merge tool in order to apply these to the engineer. I right click the engineer and then just left click all of these, and there we go. But obviously the engineer doesn't look right now because he still has his default skin and hat. By using the context menu, I can right click on him and change that. I'm gonna take off the hat, I'm going to change his arm to a gunslinger, and I'm going to use skin 4, which is the zombie skin. I believe skin 2 is Ubercharge, and then you use odd numbers for the blue team. Now I'm going to need the YouTube logo, which I believe I have here. Yes. Here we go. It looks like I'm going to have to keep the camera relatively straight on this. So let me just put it in this corner. What I want to have happen here is I want my engineer to be holding the logo. So I'm going to move him here, have him face in this direction. Oh, and another thing I need to do is establish the camera. So what I'm actually going to do is using the camera tool, increase the field of view by holding right click like this, and just get it into a perfect position. I think right about there is pretty good. Make sure the camera isn't rotated or anything. Yeah, that is probably good enough. In this position, I'm going to use the camera tool and just click in the air. Now, I don't want to accidentally move this camera, so I'm going to apply the persistent tool to it. Apply the persistent tool, you can ignore the console errors, and I'm going to... Oh wait, no, before I apply the persistent tool, I need to freeze the camera in place and then apply it and disable the collisions. There we go. Now, there's no way for me to interact with this camera at all. Now, I'm going to move on to posing my character here. I don't think he's close enough to the middle for my liking, so I'm going to move him a little closer. right about there. That looks pretty good. Obviously, he's going to need to face the camera. I'm going to switch to the camera view so I can see what's happening. And yes, I am using the medic player model. Just check in the camera view to see how good that looks. For most of my thumbnails, I don't need to pose the legs of my characters, but I'm just going to make sure that all of the additional parts are loose. For some reason, the cord is screwed up here. I've got to make sure that that's back in position. I'll rotate it into place. There we are. Usually what I do is I pose the hand first and then I handle the arm later. I'm gonna need to use the finger poser here. I want him to have his hand on his hip, and in order for that I need a flat hand, but I am going to need to adjust the fingers a little bit more in order to get that almost perfectly flat hand. The default presets for the hand positions are not very good. I need to create them myself here, and it's very difficult with so many parts to the hand. Make sure that the fingers are all roughly line up in the same way, and definitely for this one as well. For the thumb, I tend to just remove all of the joints, all of the settings I have for the thumb. Gonna make sure that the arm is completely flexible here. Alright, now it's completely flexible. I'm going to put the hand on the hip. I'm gonna have to face it this way and turn it a little just so the thumb can be visible. Alright, let me just check that it doesn't clip with the rest of the model. It does, it clips with the plug, so I'm gonna have to fiddle with it a little bit more. Damn, this thumb really is getting in the way. Okay, I am going to have to do something with that thumb. Let me just check in the camera view if that looks natural. Oh no, it doesn't. Okay, I'm gonna have to move the thumb closer to the rest of the body. Oh wow, that is okay. I think I did these fingers wrong. Maybe I should spread them out a little more like this. Yeah, I think I'll have them move in this direction instead of to the other side so that the thumb has more of a chance of looking natural. So right about here, check that all the fingers line up. They do. I'm going to remove the restrictions on the thumb again, and now move the hand back to a more desirable position. I want to see if I can get the thumb to be out of the way as much as possible. And I think that is the closest I can get. So now I'm going to put it in position. The elbow is getting in the way a little bit though, so make sure that's out. And here we go. I can have the thumb going inside the rib cage here. If I'm hiding the thumb inside the rib cage, yeah, there we go. That's pretty nice. All right, and then I can move the elbow out. Sometimes you just have to make sacrifices like that in order to make the screenshot look more appealing to the eye. Just stuff that wouldn't normally be possible. It's all just artistic merits. Alright, now we move on to the hand, and for this I'm going to move the YouTube logo out of the scene just for a moment. I'm going to hold it at a slight angle, and I'm just going to check that I can get that angle in here. I'm going to have to twist it. Just wiggle the mouse cursor in a certain direction until it looks right. Maybe if I move it a little bit closer. Alright, that's good. I'm happy with that. I'm also going to have to move our engineer's torso a little so that he's actually looking kind of at what he's done here. Yeah, alright. Now it's time for face posing. I don't have to worry about eye posing, but I do that when I'm using characters that have eyes. Engineer in Garry's mod doesn't tend to have eyes. What I'm going to do is a surprise face. I feel like that would be the most applicable here. There's scared, but that's not really what I'm looking for. Oh no, scared could be pretty good. Although I'm not too happy about... Okay, maybe I need to mix happy and scared. Happy small, and then I reduce the amount of scared. That's pretty good, I'd say. Although I do think his head needs a little bit of turning around. Oh geez, I forgot that I hadn't frozen his torso. Because you can see the bottom, I'm going to adjust the position of his cosmetics here, just so they look a little bit nicer. I'm going to turn the cord around so that's more visible, and maybe spread his legs out. It doesn't really matter where his feet go. The lower legs don't matter, it's just that the upper legs are pointing out like that. Alright, I think that's I think that's pretty decent. Usually the last thing I do when it comes to these thumbnails is I either put a green screen down or I use the current thumbnail with maybe depth of field. Now, if I was to use green screen, I would usually go to the plastic section and load up something like this, a flat surface. I would use the color green 02550 and apply it. And I would also use a material. It's a specific material right here called Debug White. This gives the purest solid color that you can possibly get. Obviously, everything here would depend on how well lit the scene is, and for lighting, I tend to use lamps, and I will, for example, adjust their settings by using this window here. So for example, I could change the FOV, the distance that the light travels, or the brightness of the light in case I don't want it super bright. But I'm not going to be doing any of that. I am instead going to be using depth of field. Using the camera view right here, what I'm going to do is open this full menu and go to post-process. Here we can find depth of field. I'll click on that, and I should now see it down here. I'm going to enable it, and I'm going to have to tweak these values so that the depth of field only applies to that far wall. I'm going to make it as blurry as possible and just move this distance until I get to the point where it's not really affecting any props anymore. Okay, maybe I should change it so that it's only affecting some of the props. Okay, there we go. I think somewhere around there is a more reasonable number. And then I can change this value in order to decrease the amount of blurring that happens. I don't want too much blurring because it also affects the engineer. So I'm going to use about this much. That looks pretty good. All right. Now that I'm basically done with everything in Garry's mod, I'm going to just left click using the camera tool in order to save a screenshot. And now we move on to the next part of the process, Paint.net. This is the image editing software that I use, and as you can see, I already have loaded here my thumbnail bar that I use on all of my thumbnails. I created this a while ago, and I still use it to this day. It might change, I don't know, but for now, it's pretty good. It means I can use less screen space and all that. First of all, we're going to need to grab the screenshot that we got from Garry's mod. We could either right-click here and say Manage Screenshots, or we could scroll down to where it says Screenshots and manage my screenshot there. Now, once we're in this menu, we click on Show on Disk, and now we can see the screenshot that I've taken. All I need to do is drag this into Paint.net and say Open New Image. I'm going to select everything and copy it, and now I'm going to create a new layer here, move it down below my thumbnail bar. I'm going to keep the canvas size. While holding Shift, I'm going to resize this image to my liking. I'm going to get it into the perfect spot, how I envision it. Okay, one thing I do want to do is get rid of that black bar at the bottom. I'm going to use the arrow keys for a little bit finer adjustment. And maybe I want to show more of the tree. Okay, I feel like that's pretty good. So now I'm going to press enter and my changes will be reflected. Now I need to manually touch up this photo because it doesn't look that great on its own. So we're going to need to make some small adjustments. First of all, I'm going to check the saturation of the entire scene. I feel like usually 110 to 120 works. In this case, I'm going to go all up and say 120. Need to make this stand out as much as possible. How about some blurs or other kinds of effects? I really want to make this stand out here. Oh, a vignette, that would be really good. Okay, so for a vignette, what I tend to do is I have a separate layer that I put on top of everything. And I start with a completely white background, and then I use the gradient tool set to radial with color swap like this. There we go. I'm just going to decrease the opacity so I can see what the center of the image is. It's rough right about here. And I'm going to increase this to the full distance so that it covers basically the entire image, but no further. There's certainly different kinds of layers for different things. Overlay looks pretty good. I'm seeing some nice changes to the color. So what I think I might do is I might duplicate. For the first layer, I'll have overlay. And for the second layer, I'll have multiply. Multiply should go on top though. Pretty much this looks pretty good, almost at full strength. So, but I'm going to keep it a little bit toned down. How about 200? I think 200 would be a nice value for that. Immediately, I'm not too happy about the vignette. It's a bit too strong, so I'm going to adjust it by using the contrast and brightness tools. I'm going to increase the brightness in order to make the vignette only really affect the sides. One last thing that I think this could use is a blur. And I know what you're thinking, I've already done a depth of field blur on this. What else could I possibly do? I'm actually thinking of using a zoom blur. But in order to do something like that, first I'm going to have to duplicate the main layer. I'm going to turn off these layers temporarily. Okay, it's automatically in the center, but it's not vertically centered, so I need to get it right. Turn the zoom all the way up so I can see roughly what the center is. That looks pretty good. You can see here that it kind of bleeds together, but it doesn't overlap. There's a sweet spot right about there. Obviously, I've made a mess here, so what I need to do is I need to paintbrush that mess away with a no alpha brush on the overwrite setting, and I've got to make sure that anti-aliasing is enabled. Turn hardness all the way down, and as you can see, as I move my brush around, it will completely remove the overblown blur effect. I'm only going to need it on a certain portion of this picture, so I'm going to start with, I'm going to use a large brush so that I can do coarse adjustments while staying away from the edges, because if you go to the edges, you actually start to affect the blur on the places that you actually want the blur to be on itself. And now that I've done that, I'm going to move to a smaller brush and start affecting closer to the edge. As you can see, I'm really trying not to affect the background there. It's going to be unavoidable for this one particular area, so I'm going to have to zoom in right about here and just paint around it. In fact, I'm gonna have to paint around a lot of this. The rest of the background doesn't look good blurred. It should only be the models over here that need to be blurred. And in order to make sure I've done all that, I need to turn off this layer. There we can see all of the work that I've done, and I can continue it. Obviously, for other thumbnails, I would use a lot more fancy techniques, including maybe using the magic wand to get the background out. Of course, it wouldn't work here because I didn't use a fully green background, but I could use the magic wand to delete background that is completely green, and then use a small Gaussian blur, maybe only 1 or 2 pixels. Usually when you use the magic wand for deletion, it screws up the softness of the picture. But I think this is a pretty good thumbnail as it is, and I'm sure you'll probably agree with me. I'm gonna set this as the thumbnail of my new video. We went from this to this. And that is how YouTube thumbnails work. You overemphasize a particular image to turn it from some screenshot that anybody could take into something that people would probably want to click on. And that is going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I know it was quick. Don't forget my $6 patron, Garry Lexington, Notanactuallname, still supporting me after how many weeks or months he's been on. And I will see you guys next Friday, or next time, because I always stuff up my outros when I'm not on a script. Do you want exclusive benefits, including seeing your name in the credits of my new videos? Then click the top right icon in this video or the link in the description to go to my Patreon page. Any level of support is very much appreciated.